So welcome to the presentation, Navigating Crime Data, Unlocking the Treasures of NACJD. Today, we will be covering a little bit about us, our search functionality. We will have a live search demonstration. We will cover the restricted data application, and we will have any time for questions. But first things first about our presenters. Hi, I'm Anna Berryford. I am a data project assistant for NACJD. I've been with NACJD for around 2 years, but I've been at ICPSR for 5 years.
Hi, I'm Meg Vlade. I'm also a data project assistant with NACJD. I've been with NACJD for 1 year and ICPSR for 3 years.
So a little bit about NACJD, or the National Archive of Criminal Justice Data. We support secondary research on crime and crime data by facilitating the discovery and reuse of data. We are one of the oldest archives at ICPSR, being established in 1978, and our primary audience is students, faculty, news organizations, and non-academic research institutions. We have three primary funders from the Department of Justice. First is the Bureau of Justice Statistics, or BJS, which is US's primary source for statistics on crime. Then there's the National Institute of Justice, or NIJ, which is the research, development, and evaluation agency that supports individual researchers to produce evidence-based research. And then there's the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Similar to NIJ, it supports individual researchers, but it has a focus on juvenile delinquency and improving the conditions of the juvenile justice system. Here are a list of some of our most popular studies and series. A lot of these are based on the national level, but we do have series and studies at the state, city, and county level as well. How do you find those types of studies and other studies at NACJD? So here are some search tips. First things first is you can't use our search functionality like Google. And what I mean by that is you can't type in a question and get a result. So for example, if you were interested in the crime rates of a specific county, you couldn't search for it like crime rates of X county, but you could search for crime rates and find a study on crime rates and calculate it with that study. Our search functionality is spelling sensitive. So if you misspell a word, you may not get the full search results and you might not get any results. So make sure things are spelled correctly. Search terms can be found anywhere within the study. So the title, the description, variables from the study, and so on. If you're interested in excluding results, you can use a minus sign. So a lot of our studies are based on the national level. So if you're interested in studies that weren't at the national level, you can do minus national and find studies that didn't have that. You can use quotes to find exact expressions. For example, if you're interested in studies that are on trauma-informed care, you can kind of use quotation marks around those words and find studies explicitly on that. And then you can find derivatives. So what I mean by that is if you type in shoot and you type in shooting, you will get the similar search results. The ordering might have a little variety, but the end result will be the same. Here are our search results fields. First is a study. A study is an individual data collection. We have over 3,500 studies at NACJD. Then we have data-related publications. These are products made with NACJD studies. These can be things like a journal article, a newspaper, a conference report, and so on. Data-related publications can be really helpful to see how data has been used in the past. Alternatively, if you want to find a gap in research and see maybe a new innovative way to use a study, you can examine what's been previously done as well. A variable is the searchable variables of a study. This is the questions of a study. We have over 1.8 million searchable variables. A series is a collection of studies that are related in some way. Most often, this is in years of collection, but we do have some series that are topically related. And then we have the NACJD website. So these are most often the announcements or resources that are findable on our website. Another way to find data is using the Discover Data webpage. This can be helpful if you have a little bit more specific of a starting point to find data. For example, you can click a special topic of interest. Additionally, there's this NIJ-funded research projects in forensic sciences. So if some NIJ-funded studies are non-standard formats for us to disseminate, so think of something like natural sciences or biological sciences or forensic sciences. So if you're interested in that type of data, I recommend clicking that link. So now we're going to begin the live search demonstration. So this is the NACJD homepage, and this is the search bar that we're going to use. Now, I'm going to deep dive on the topic of sea. Since we do have a data fair that's kind of nautical related, we're going to choose a nautical related theme. So there are a few things that come up immediately. First is the filters. You could use filters to further specify your subject of interest. Some helpful filters might be the subject terms. If you don't see a term that's relevant to your search term, I recommend clicking the view all, and you can kind of see all potential terms. It might be easier to use like a command search and search through this instead of scrolling manually, but this could be good to generate kind of new ideas. Another area of interest might be geography. Again, a lot of our studies are based on the national level, but we do have city and state specific data as well. And again, if you don't see your specific area of interest, you can click that view all and kind of expand through this a little bit more. And then you might be seeing some familiar subjects. There's also the summaries tab. Personally, I think it's easier to just click on a study to learn more about it, but this could be helpful. So based off of the sea search results, I'm not seeing anything that's particularly sea related. I'm seeing something on bullying, admission court data. So I'm going to change up the term a little bit and add another term. So maybe I'm interested in shipping. So that did change up the results. This study looks kind of interesting. It does range through 1608 to 2002, but not necessarily sea related. Let's try ocean. So based off of these search results, I'm not seeing anything that's particularly sea related. So I'm going to actually search through the variables feature. So you may have noticed that the filters have changed. So this could be kind of helpful if you're looking to see how variables have changed throughout multiple years of data. And then we also have this time period. So a lot of times people are interested in specific years of data, so that could be helpful to use. So I'm going to use our variable compare feature, to kind of examine these variables further. Just unclick the first few. So this feature draws up our compare variables page. We have the variable name, the label, the question text. These don't seem to have question text, but some will. The label seems detailed enough, so that's not really an issue. Response frequency table, the study name, the time period, and the universe or the sample of interest. So let's start underneath. So decide how you could spend money rather than letting you spend it how you see fit, and demand that you give them receipts or change when you spend money. So these are kind of economic related questions, and I can kind of see that because I know that C actually stands for scale of economic abuse. So these are questions pertaining to economic abuse. So this can be a common naming convention for certain scales. You might see the scale name and then like a number. And I can kind of see, from the study name, it is about intimate partner violence. So that's another way you can search for information. You can search for specific scales of interest. But from our first variable, how true is each statement for you? I would not be afraid to try a risky sport like deep sea diving. We finally have a sea-related question in our crime archive, which is pretty interesting. So I'm going to click on this variable name to learn more about this. So first, there's a search variables feature. So if you were interested in searching for different variables within the study, you could do so. For example, age. So I can see that there's an age-related variable. I can see that it was taken from the same study. Cool. So you can also scroll up and down to search for specific studies. So this seems like studies related to temperament. So this is another thematic naming habit where variables will maybe have a certain theme to them and then like a number. A common one is like demographics or demo. So from this, I can see the study name. If this was a part of a series, you'd also have a link to the series name. And then we have that variable name, the variable label. We have a frequency chart with percentages of each frequency. So majority of respondents said sometimes true, sometimes untrue. We do see that there are some missing values. So I would probably have to deep dive in the data a little bit more to discover if this is like missingness at random or maybe some people didn't get these types of questions. I'd have to look in the data a little bit more. So we do see number of cases though. So this is based on 120 valid cases out of 867 total cases. Good to know. There are some summary statistic information. This is, a 5-point categorical variable. So you don't get the most amount of information from the minimum and maximum, but if this was a continuous variable, you can maybe get more out of that. And then we do have a chart. So I'm going to actually click the study name to see if this is a study of interest for me. So we're taking to the study homepage. We have the study name. We have when it was published. We also have the principal investigators or who did this research and their institution name. Now, I personally, when I'm looking at studies, I like to start at subject terms instead of summary. I think it gives you a lot quicker overview of a study, especially if you're comparing multiple studies at a time to kind of gauge what suits your research questions. I think that's kind of faster. So subject terms, I can read this. I can also look at the geographic coverage area, and then I would recommend reading the summary as well. And another key area of interest would be the methodology section. So this tells you about the research question, the time method, the sampling, what was the units of observation, how was the data collected. And one part that I always think that's very interesting is the presence of common scales. So this tells you what scales were used in the study, and this can be very interesting if you're trying to create your own survey and you want to look at subjects of a similar theme. You can see what surveys or what scales have been used in the past. You could also check on the validity of these scales, which is always fun to do. So if any part of this you have a question or you're kind of confused on like, what's this type of data collection? There is this little question mark that you can click and it tells you additional information. I would say time method is always very helpful to look at and so on. But yeah, okay, so I've kind of determined that this is a study I want to use, but I see this red text and I also see this access restricted data button, which indicates to me that this is a restricted data study. So I'm going to pass it over to Meg so we can learn more about accessing restricted data at NACJD.
Thank you, Anna. I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully that's coming up all right for everyone. So as Anna mentioned, once you've located a study that fits your research needs, you may notice that the data are restricted. Today, I'm going to broadly walk you through the restricted data application process with a focus on one of the application portals you may encounter here at NACJD and ICPSR. So as you can see, the first thing you're always going to want to do is click that Access Restricted Data button. Once you click on the Access Restricted Data button, a pop-up will appear with some general guidance for you to review before initiating your application. For studies sponsored by BJS, the pop-up will contain linked text to the ResearchData.gov website. So we'll click on that. And clicking on that link will redirect you to the equivalent study page on the ResearchData.gov site, where you will then be able to apply for access through the ResearchData.gov portal. You are welcome to contact us with any questions or for more information about research.data.gov. But for the purposes of this presentation, our focus will be on the ICPSR application portal. So, unlike BJS-sponsored studies, for studies sponsored by NIJ or OJJDP, this will be the pop-up that you see, and clicking on the Continue button at the bottom right will take you directly to the ICPSR application portal for the data being requested. There are a few different data access mechanisms we offer at ICPSR. They differ depending on the sensitive nature and the level of disclosure risk involved in a study. The secure data download option is one of the most common access modalities, and that's actually the modality I'm going to be diving in deeper in a bit. This involves an online application. Once you are approved, we will send you a secure download of the data, which you will then store and access from a secure location. There are a few different secure options available, which I will discuss in a bit. The second access mechanism we offer is the Virtual Data Enclave, or VDE. This is a virtual machine hosted by ICPSR that can be launched from the researcher's own computer while operated on a remote server. This is reserved for more sensitive data. Nothing can come into or out of the VDE without ICPSR's approval. The final access modality is the Physical Data Enclave, or PDE. This is reserved for the most sensitive of data. To access this data, you will need to travel to our secure physical location in Ann Arbor to access the data. So today I'm going to walk you through a bit of the process for applying for data available for secure data download. First, let's review a few key terms. Once you've clicked that Access Restricted Data button and clicked Continue on that pop-up, you'll be taken to our portal, which looks a little bit like the screenshot on the left. That is what your application will look like. This application portal is called IDARS, which stands for ICPSR's Data Access Request System. There are two important people that are going to be involved in the application process, the PI and the institutional representative. The principal investigator, or the PI, must have a PhD or an equivalent terminal degree and be actively affiliated with the institution associated with the application. A lot of graduate students apply for our data to work on their dissertations, which we absolutely welcome. However, they usually need to find a sponsor who has that terminal degree to sign on as the PI on the application. Signing on as the PI means that you are responsible for the secure download and storage of the data, as well as the secure destruction of the data at the end of your project. The institutional representative is somebody who is legally authorized to sign on behalf of your institution. And this is usually someone in an office for research and sponsored programs, or a contracts officer. Not every institution has somebody with this exact title. So if you ever need help figuring out who that person might be at your institution, we are always available to talk it out with you. Next, I want to go through some of the basic sections on the application. As you can see here on the left, that's basically the first half of the application. The first section is the investigator information, where we'll collect some details about the PI on the application. As we discussed, this person has to meet the requirements that I outlined previously. Additionally, we highly encourage everybody on the application to use their institutional email address. This will help us to make sure that everyone is affiliated, and it might help you keep better track of your application. The next section is research staff information, and this is where everyone who will be on the project will be listed. So everybody who will have access to the raw data will be listed here. And again, you should use your institutional email address and be affiliated with the same institution as the PI. There are opportunities for people from different institutions to collaborate, but they'll need to have their own application with their own PI who is eligible. In this section, you'll also describe the make and model of the computer that you're using to access the data. And it's really important that this information is consistent with the information that you will later put into your data security plan. The next section is the research description. So this is where you will describe your proposed analysis and list a few variables of interest, which you may have found through those search methods that Anna shared or by looking through the code book. You'll also want to let us know why access to these restricted data is necessary for answering your research questions. And the final sections are data selection and data format. The data selection section will be automatically populated with the study that you use to navigate to the portal. And you can also add or remove any other studies that you'd like to request. The data format section is simply a ranking of your preference for different data packages. So if your preference is SPSS, data, etc. Next, I'm going to discuss the required documents. So once you've filled out all of that information, you're going to want to upload your documents. The first document would be a letter from your IRB or a screenshot from your IRB portal that shows that you've received approval or exemption to use these data for your research. The next document is an NIJ privacy certificate, and this is only necessary for NIJ-sponsored restricted data. The NIJ privacy certificate is probably the document that we receive the most questions about or have the most feedback to share about. And this is because it requires very specific responses. And it's very important that when you're filling out this form, you very carefully read over the sample text. As you can see in this screenshot on the left, you have the blue box where your response will be. And in that box, we have an italicized description of exactly what we're looking for in that response. When I'm reviewing the NIJ privacy certificate, I have a split screen with the sample text on one side and the researcher's privacy certificate on the other side. And I basically just go box by box to make sure they're hitting all of those details that we asked for in the sample text. I recommend that you use the same method when you're filling it out on your own. The final document that we require, and this is required for pretty much all restricted data applications at ICPSR, is the Restricted Data Use Agreement, or RDUA. And this is a legal agreement between the University of Michigan and the researcher's institution. And like the NIJ privacy certificate, both of those documents should be signed by both the PI and the institutional representative. And finally, I want to discuss the confidential data security plan. As you can see, I have a QR code here to a link tree, and this has all three of the access modalities for secure data download in great detail. And I'll speak a little bit about each of them. The first is the external hard drive plan. And this is where you'll have a physical external drive, like a flash drive or any hard drive that's encrypted. And you will connect it to a computer that is disconnected from the internet. When you're done analyzing the data, it needs to go in a locked drawer, and it should be stored in the same location where you're accessing the data, a locked drawer or office. The second type of plan is the standalone computer plan, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is a computer that is disconnected from the internet and is solely dedicated to the storage and analysis of the data. So during the course of your project, this computer should not be used to store any other data or used for any other research. And the final plan is the local virtual or physical enclave on an isolated network plan. This is where the data are stored in a secure environment that's managed by the researcher's institution. The secure environment must abide by very specific requirements, which is why it's important to look at some of these pages that I've linked here. So if you chose to use that plan, it is bulleted out in very detailed language, exactly what we require. So it must abide by those specific requirements and be approved by the privacy and security team at ICPSR. There are some benefits to this plan because it can allow collaboration between researchers who may not be doing their research in the same location, and so they can still work on the same network. But these requirements are also a lot more stringent and may require some back and forth communication between your institution's IT team and ICPSR's IT and privacy teams. We want to make sure that all the requirements are met. Typically, we want to ensure the system meets FISMA or FedRAMP compliance. Now that we've discussed how to decide where to store the treasured restricted data, we have covered every section of a restricted data application. Whether you have applied for NACJD's restricted data in the past, or you are interested in doing so in the future, hopefully this walkthrough has helped to demystify a bit of the application process. Additionally, we hope that Anna's search demonstration helped you see some of the wonderful search capabilities NACJD's website has to offer. We thank you for your time today and for attending Navigating Crime Data, Unlocking the Treasures of NACJD. If you have any remaining questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A panel here, and we'll take a few minutes. And if you have any questions about ResearchData.gov, or you wish to have a more in-depth conversation about the search or application process, or even if you just think of a random question later, we're always available to answer questions through our user support email. So we'll just stick around for a couple minutes and see if there's any Q&As in the Q&A panel, and if not, please feel free to reach out. Thank you all again so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.